welcome, and we have another freeing. Our plexiglass is down, so we won't be having any squabbling of what we're saying and who's saying it and who to call on. So welcome, everyone. I will let the roll reflect that all the council members are present and a quorum has been established. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes or the meeting from the workshop on July 6th? Seeing none, they are approved. Tonight we have comments from the audience, and for the public comments, we have options for comments to be mailed, and they have been received by our council. And for live comments, you may step up to the podium, state your name and your address, and speak to the council on something that is on the agenda. For those at home, we have the Zoom feature as well, and they are invited to speak one at a time. I also want to remind everyone that the public comment period is not intended for an extended dialogue. So is there anyone who would like to wish to speak to the council at this time from Zoom? Sure. And I will also note that we do have the public hearings for the ordinance and for the rescinding on the executive order. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak at this point about something other than the two public hearings that are coming forward? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Then council items to be considered. I would like to add a resolution declaration of limitation on watering, sprinkling, and other exterior water usage to the agenda for later. Are there any other council items to be considered? Okay, council, I would approve a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Brox
Second.
and Councilmember Lund.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Vaughn.
I'd like to pull number 5, please, for some clarification.
Sure. We'll move number 5 is a resolution to authorize submittal of grant to Dakota CDA RIG for the Seaward Apartment Complex. And we will move that under administration. With number 5 being removed, council, could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda? We got I'm sorry, we have the motion. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Tonight we have a public hearing for the city code amendment for chickens. For this item, we will have an introduction by Community Development Director John Hinsman, and followed by a public hearing and a potential action by the city council. Welcome, John.
Thank you, City Council members. I'm going to put up a summary of the ordinance requirement that we're looking at tonight. Council, your action before you tonight is to hold a public hearing and to consider action on an ordinance amendment allowing an expansion of the keeping of chickens in residential areas. Now, I know the council is pretty informed of the history of this. I won't get into too much detail related to it, other than we first allowed chickens at the Leduc Mansion in 2009. We had some discussion at that time period on the extension into residential areas. Ultimately, that was denied by the city council at that time. In 2019, we had a petition come forward from various residents to reconsider chickens. We had some hearings on it, took action at the Planning Commission, action at the City Council, did not get the majority to pass at that time. That ordinance amendment was ceased to move forward. After that, there was some discussions within our Planning Committee of City Council at looking at chickens again. We had the City Council look at the Planning Committee's recommendation in the last month or two. They asked the City Council to start a new ordinance amendment and to consider chickens in residential areas. Planning Commission did do so. They did have a public hearing a couple meetings ago, did recommend in a 7-0 vote to recommend the changes that we see before you tonight. During the public hearing, we did have, I think, 9 people speak to the planning commission addressing that item, all of them in favor of the keeping of chickens. One of the things that we have done with our public comment email is we've taken in a lot of comments related to chickens itself. I have submitted the comments that have come in via that to the council members, so they have that. I think there's 17 of those altogether that came in. To generalize the comments, we had about 10 people in support of keeping chickens, 5 people that did not support keeping chickens, and 2 people that gave mixed comments within that. The details of those varied, and the details are before the city council, updated as of, I think, 5 o'clock today, so they do have that. So what we're looking at tonight is a change within the city code to allow the keeping of chickens within residential areas. I'll go through some ordinance highlights here. When we talk about chickens, we are talking about hens only. We're not looking at keeping roosters. Roosters would be prohibited within the city code. The reason behind that is roosters make noise. Hens don't make the noise. They don't crow the way that roosters do. Properties under 1 acre may have up to 4 hens. So any property, most residential properties in town would have that. If you have a property over 1 acre, which when you take a look at the city outside of agricultural areas, doesn't come up too often, there is an additional provision on that. So they are allowed in most zoning districts. So if you're in a home within the R1, 2, or 3 districts, you could have a chicken for a license on the ordinance amendment before you tonight. You must provide minimum outdoor spaces and building spaces. There's specific requirements within the code that you have to have for each chicken, each hen that you have. They must be kept sanitary and free of noxious odors. There's inspections to ensure compliance that these do occur. This would be a license. What a license would be is something that is issued with the assistance of the community development staff and issued by the city clerk. A license goes with the property owner. So property owner must live on site. The property owner moves to a different location, that license ceases. That license does not transfer itself. The license would be a 5-year permit with a $75 fee to cover some of the expenses that we'd have to incur in permitting this. So chicken license is ordered, is issued administratively, and would continue on for a 5-year period. However, if there is a situation in which the individual with the license is not following the rules, this could be revoked by the city council if a violation occurs. So there is a mechanism in there that if they're not keeping things sanitary and free of noxious odors, or it's become a nuisance in some way in violation of the ordinance, that there would be a potential for revoking that. Also along with this is there's an amendment to our portable accessory structure requirements, allowing some smaller structures administratively and not counting towards a total building, accessory building total within here. This relates to chickens as well as also relates to making it easier to have an additional smaller building within a property without having to go through zoning permits on that. So that is the requirements that we are proposing for you tonight. Again, this is a public hearing, so you can open that at this time, or I can answer any questions that you may have via staff. Thank you.
Thanks, John. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone that would like to speak to the ordinance at this time, please step forward and you can, please state your name and your address. We'll do the public the public from the council chambers first, and then we'll go to Zoom after that. Yes.
Several people are commenting that they're having issues hearing audio via Zoom
Okay.
on our Facebook group for the chickens.
So would that be?
My name's Corey, first off. I live at 3161 Riverwood Drive. I just want to mention that people on our Facebook group for the chickens are having issues via Zoom hearing the audio. I don't know if there's something that could be addressed for that. Otherwise, I'm here to ask that the city council votes in favor of passing the amendment to our existing ordinance regarding the keeping of chickens. I ask that you base your votes on the factual data collected by city staff that has come from valuable resources such as the Minnesota Department of Health, University of Minnesota, and the CDC. This information has reassured many officials and citizens that chickens are not a risk to our community. I ask that you do not base your votes on the fear, misconceptions, or uninformed biases regarding this topic. The allowance of chickens will not pose a risk to our community nor cause a rift between our neighbors. People who are respectful, despite being from opposing sides on this topic, can become friends over this. I've met a gentleman who I've shared numerous heated debates with, and many people thought we would have hated each other's guts. Instead, I found somebody who I can consider a friend. He's even tolerated me putting up a giant bright red chicken in his front yard, as well as a sign to show his support. The allowance of this ordinance is more than just being about fresh eggs. People are interested in obtaining locally produced, organic foods that come from happy and healthy hens. They can be one less person that does not contribute to the cruelty induced on production chickens. They'll have the ability to reduce their carbon footprint on the land, enjoy the experience of raising their hens, educating their children, and interested neighbors. These are just a few examples of why I believe this ordinance should pass. On behalf of the 258 Hastings residents who signed our petition, I ask that you vote yes to this ordinance amendment. Some of them are in attendance to this meeting tonight, but for those who are not able to attend, please let me tell them good news of a positive vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Anyone else wishing to speak? Sure.
Speak into the microphone.
Thank you. I will speak into the microphone, yes, okay. Madam Mayor,
Welcome.
yeah, members of my city council, thank you for your service in making this city a good place for we residents to reside. I thank you warmly for that. I hope you can hear me, right?
We can.
Okay. When my family moved to Hastings 54 years ago, we came here for its location, its beautiful natural resources, and its history, which of course to this day makes it beautifully unique. This city, on the bend of the mighty Mississippi, is where I call home and where all of you call home. So on that point, we agree tonight. 54 years ago, my family rented a house on 3rd Street. We later built one on 15th Street, which is where I live today. And by the way, I'm Glenda Schneering, 1136 West 15th. On moving here, I immediately bought a copy of the Hastings Gazette, which became my source of finding out where I might fit as a community volunteer. I'd already joined the newly opened St. Philip's Lutheran Church, but I also wanted to come to know and help my new city. Community involvement for the wholeness of our city was the driver in my quest to make Hastings an even better place to live. I had what is called pride of place. The ecumenical movement of the early 70s, which brought members from all churches together, the historical survey, which I worked on, and some parcels in town became registered on the National Historic Register, the Meals on Wheels program, which I helped begin, the dedication of the present railroad bridge over the river, which I co-chaired when the Delta Queen was tied down at the levee, open for tours, the Vermilion River Project, which put that land rightfully in floodplain, the helping of the historic Leduc, which became a tourist destination, is a sampling of the backdrop that brings me here tonight. I didn't do that to brag. I want you to know this chicken thing isn't what brought me out of the house tonight. Hastings brings me out of the house if I see that it's in jeopardy in any way. I care deeply about our city, and I want it to be the best it can be. The threat of reversing or adding this ordinance, the amendment to the ordinance, which prevents the raising, the threat of reversing the current ordinance, which prevents the raising of chickens within our city, gives me great concern. It's an affront to me. It's an affront to helping Hastings trend forward. The existing ordinance was written for good reasons, one of which would be the general welfare of Hastings citizens. Reversing the ordinance or adding this amendment turns its back on the guide that protects homeowners from situations that can cause discord. The notion of having neighbors on 3 sides of one's property choose to raise chickens within 5 feet of one's lot line raises the question of why would we ever do that? The value of neighborhood harmony is priceless. Reversing the ordinance or adding the amendment potentially puts neighbor-to-neighbor relationships in peril. Neighborhood harmony is the underpinning of a healthy community. In my opinion, reversing the ordinance or adding that amendment would not be an asset that would attract new citizens to our zip code. One would not list it on a brochure promoting Hastings. My points are driven by my heart and the emotion I feel for wanting to keep Hastings on an upward trend. The Grand River Walk, our bike and walking trails, the Art Space Building, the Hastings Arts Center, the beautified Todd Field, the Pleasant Hill Library, a school system which launches young people into citizenship, and a Hastings Chamber, along with the civic organizations, all give strength. They all give strength to the profile of our city. In my view, what would not give strength to this profile is allowing for the raising of chickens within the city limits. So figuratively speaking, a city has a corporate profile. It has an asset column and a deficit column, which are key in its quest to become a better city overall. Bringing in agricultural activity, as in the raising of chickens, doesn't make the cut, in my opinion. So I ask you, my mayor, my city council members, to vote no on this potential amendment to an ordinance change. Stay the course of not raising chickens on parcels of personal property in our city of Hastings. I thank you.
Thank you, Glenda.
We're troubleshooting a couple things here. Sure.
Phone isn't working at all.
Let's see if that helps. All yours.
Okay. Hi, my name is Brian Winkler. I live on 3151 Riverwood Drive. I'm in support of the chicken ordinance. I think it's the way of the times. Pretty much almost everywhere you hear of a lot of the other cities in the state have the chickens. I think there's going to be a lot of good positive things that come from it, and it's going to be a fun experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
A little slow.
That's okay, Mr. Shute. Welcome.
The acoustics in this room are terrible. My name is John Shute. I have been a resident of Hastings since August 15th, 1961. I'm a retired educator, having taught for 35 years, of which 32 years were here in the Hastings School District. 24 years of my teaching was in the district, pardon me, I'll start again. 24 years of the teaching career was in the district here in Hastings. And I taught government for 24 years. And of course, one of the things I'm concerned about is this issue being sort of jammed down the throats of the voters. The council is on board, I understand that, but I think this issue is one in which the city, the electorate of the city should be surveyed, should know what's going on. I just can't see having chickens anymore at this day and age. One of the council persons said, well, this is the deal now. Well, I don't agree with that. We got to get on board with these chickens. chickens. I spoke to the board, to the council here about 12, 13 years ago opposing this. And I'm not, and of course, I'm back here again. But one of the things I'm concerned with, too, is having the gentleman speak first here, telling about the different regulations. But what size will the building be that is going to house these chickens? Is there do you need a building permit? How are you going to heat this in the wintertime? Extension cords, or are you going to run a wire from your electrical box to the chicken building? And of course, in the wintertime, when you've got snow, and it gets pretty cold, I see a lot of people just using extension cords. They're a fire hazard the longer you run the cord. And of course, as it was mentioned too, do we have to hire a chicken manager now? As we did years ago with a dog catcher. You had a dog catcher. And of course, one of the things I asked a couple of the council people if they had checked with the fire chief in regards to the hazards of fire. In checking with the fire chief, John Townsend, he said that no one had called him in regards to that. So I'm concerned about that. And of course, this bit of a fast track, getting this thing passed, I still think the citizens, the electorates of this city should be informed of this. I know I used to live on 14th Street. There was 15 feet between each house, or each side of my house, all the way down to Pine Street. If everyone had chickens, I'm sure you could smell them. And of course, one of the council person mentioned, well, we've got to do this, we've got to keep up with the times. In other words, if Farmington or somebody else says the speed limits in the city is 50 miles an hour, we have to have a speed limit at 50 miles an hour. I just don't buy that. But anyway, I strongly encourage some type of a survey going out to the electorates. When I think about it, the people that want chickens, it's just a small percentage of the electorate of the city of Hastings. We have approximately, what, 3,500 voters in each ward. I used to work as an election judge for 20 years, and you know, I still think the voters should have something to say about this and not just jam down the throat. The council is well aware of it, yeah, over the years, but not the voters out there. Okay, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shute. John, would you like to address the size and licensing questions that Mr. Shute had? Sure, I think you can do it now.
Thank you for waiting.
Of course.
Well, we get there.
I know, you do well.
Thank you.
Mayor and city council members, as far as the regulations for chicken ordinance and some of the questions that Mr. Shute had brought up, I'm going to refer back to the ordinance. We have requirements in here pertaining to outside space and indoor space. So required enclosed outdoor area, you need to have at least that's the fence, 6 feet high. 4 square feet per chicken in the indoor. So for every chicken you have, you need to have 4 square feet of building space for that chicken. And in an outdoor yard area, you need to have a minimum of 8 square feet per chicken. So if you had 4 chickens, 32 square feet outdoor area, indoor area, would be 16 square feet. As far as the regulations pertaining to building permit, if a building is under a certain size, it would not trigger a building permit itself. It may trigger a zoning permit. What it would review is the electrical cords that go in there that Mr. Shute had brought up. We do have a provision in here which specifically addresses that they need to meet regulations, that if it's a situation in which an extension cord is brought in to a chicken building housing chickens, that would be something that would not be allowed. It needs to comply with those heating requirements. It says here, any device for heating heat lamps within a building to house chickens must be properly rated for that use and secured so as not to cause a fire hazard. So that's something that we do have within the code requirements, is that they do need to meet that end of it. And I'm trying to remember if I missed one item in here. If I did, I can answer that. And
Building permit?
oh, building permit, yeah. On a building permit, if the building is going to be under 75 square feet, it wouldn't require a building permit or a zoning permit itself. However, even if it's a smaller size like that, we would have an initial inspection to ensure that it meets our requirements for keeping of chickens and from a durability standpoint. So there is a staff review of that. It may not trigger a building permit requirement because the size may not be large enough, or may not have that size to trigger a building permit.
Thank you, John. Okay, anyone else wish to speak?
Heidi Langenfeld, 500 2nd West, 2nd Street West. Mayor, council members, I was here when it was 2009, and I had called Justin Fortney to find out what the city required to keep chickens, because at the time I was site manager at the Leduc House. And of course, the Leducs raised chickens, and historically, many of their neighbors did too. It wasn't uncommon to have chickens back then in town here. But so we worked really hard on the ordinance and how it would fit, and there were some citizens that were interested in it too, so then they opened it up for that, and we all know that that didn't work out. But I would like to share with you our experience at the Leduc House. You might think, well, you're not in a neighborhood there. It's sort of more commercial or museum-like. But we have neighbors all around behind the Leduc House on the back, the back side of the street that faces Ramsey. And our experience was that our neighbors were very excited about our chickens. It was not uncommon to see people bringing their children over in their strollers to show them the chickens. We had to tell them, no, some of the things you can't feed them, because they all wanted to feed the chickens. So it was not a matter of people objecting to our 16 hens, and our visitors never complained that it smelled bad on our property. So people who care enough to go through everything that it's going to require to keep chickens, I personally feel, are going to be responsible citizens and neighbors, and will not abuse that opportunity to share. Many of them may have children, and what a wonderful opportunity to have a family work together. Children learn where their food comes from. Imagine them seeing their pet chicken laying an egg, and then they get to eat the egg. That's really neat. I mean, that's my viewpoint of it. So I am very pro-chicken. I'm sure you've picked that up by now. And I would really just like to encourage you to consider some of those aspects of having chickens, and that I don't believe it would cause dissension. I respect, people's feelings about that. Maybe it's more not understanding or being connected to chickens in your childhood and stuff, which I was. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Heidi.
Untitled Council. My name is Lane Johnson Crump. I live at 802 10th Street West. I'm speaking today as a private citizen and also as the president of the Hastings Environmental Protectors. The Hastings Environmental Protectors, or HEP, supports local agriculture for the benefits that it has for our land and our communities, and also as a component of the Green Steps program, a program that our organization has spoken to many of the city council members on. As a private citizen and in my career as a preschool teacher at a nature-based farm preschool, I see the magic every day that Heidi was talking about that comes from connecting children and young people to nature and to animals, but also adults. I had never held a chicken until I worked there. I had never seen one hatch out of its egg before, and letting children have that and experience that miracle in a way that many children can't anymore because they don't grow up on farms. They grow up in beautiful cities like this and in beautiful cities other places, and you know, we don't want to encourage everybody to have litters of puppies and kittens, but hatching eggs and having chickens and seeing where our food comes from in such an easy and kind of compact way that chickens allows is a big benefit to children and to adults, and also to us understanding the natural world. I haven't been as lucky to live in Hastings for decades as some of the other speakers have, but I hope to continue to live in our city for a long time. And I'm doing a lot of work in the community to help cement my place here and also to connect with the community. I have many friends who live in the Twin Cities and in suburbs who happily keep chickens with no problems from their neighbors. And I am envious of those cities that have more progressive values about regenerative agriculture that can connect us to our food and to the natural world, which benefits ourselves, our families, but also our communities and our planet. So I am in support of amending the chicken amendment to allow for chickens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make an observation? I want to make a clarification because our eggs, they're not going to turn into chickens. They're not going to.
Hello, my name is Holly Johnson, and I live at 1177 Teal Way here in Hastings, and I am one of the newer citizens here. We lived here for a short amount of time, moved away, and I got pregnant 5 years ago, and we decided that we wanted to call Hastings our home. My husband and I are not from the state of Minnesota, and we have chosen Hastings to set our footsteps in. And I am in support of the chickens. I grew up in Iowa, so we had chickens. Our chickens lived in a doghouse. That kind of explains the size of the home. We only had 3, and you know, we didn't have to have them warm because chickens are hardy animals. But so with me having a 4-year-old and working in the early education system, I would like to take this on with our children. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm an even newer resident. I just moved here last month, and I was around town and I saw a lot of these signs, and they drew me to kind of look into this a little bit more. And I didn't realize all of the history that kind of was delved into this issue for the city. I've always had chickens my entire life, and you know, I grew up in Baltimore. We were a very much more dense place, I think that's fair to say. In the suburbs, and we had about 20 chickens in our property, and we had less than an acre. And that was within city ordinance. And the reason it was within city ordinance was because we backed up to a large plot of land that we could basically allow them to go in. And one thing that I thought that hasn't been mentioned here is not only the benefit that it provides to, I think, young folks, to the education that it brings about, and to the responsibility. We allow our kids to have dogs, we allow them to have pets. And I think chickens are another responsibility that you put upon your kids to teach them things about agriculture. You know, our founding fathers talked a lot about how being a yeoman farmer was an important part of developing virtue, to care about others' needs. And we do that a lot through how we take care of animals. And I think chickens are a great way to do that because they can stay outside all the time and they don't have to stink up your house. So I think there's compromises that can be made here. I think this actually should be taken to a referendum to allow the people to have a say. Usually that's how we've done these things in Maryland when we have our chicken initiatives put forth. And I think that allowing people to have that ability to speak on the issue and, frankly, to have more public input than just 10 people in a room would be a great thing to have. But that's really all I have. I am at 414 2nd Street West, so I'm also meeting neighbors at the, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, welcome. Anyone else like to speak? Sure, come on up.
Hello.
Hello.
My name's Elijah. I'm also from 414 2nd Street West. I grew up in southern Texas. I had several dozen chickens, and they taught me a lot of personal responsibility. I didn't own chickens until later in my life, but upon doing so, I learned that they're very, hens especially, they're non-assuming animals. You can have them in pretty close proximity of your neighbors, and your neighbors won't know you have them until they come around and see them on your property. So that's not really a lot else to say in the matter, but I'm a big supporter of chickens as well. God bless you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add one other thing?
You sure can.
Brian Winkler again, 3151 Riverwood Drive. Talked to friends of mine. A good friend of mine lives over in West St. Paul. They have chickens. I have not heard any negative problems from what this friend of mine, Tom Johnson, told me. And I think everything's good, and I think it's go, and I think it's going to be really good and positive.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sasha Sebasowitz-Greiner, and I live at 517 Ramsey Street, so just a couple blocks that way. My house, oh, sorry. My house is in the historic district. It was built in 1947, so just after the end of World War II, which we all know people had their victory gardens going. And I assume that they also had like victory chicken coops going on then. So I feel like it would fit very well, especially in the historic part of town, to have people have chickens. I think everybody else has said all the good positive things. Other cities like St. Paul, Minneapolis, you can have chickens there, Bloomington. It really kind of amazes me that we don't have chickens here yet, legally. And I think it would just be a great asset to the town to allow the people that want to have them. I think the people who would take the time and effort to research chickens, build a chicken coop, go get their permit from the city, I think they would definitely be taking care of them. They don't want to lose out on that investment by having sick chickens or having the threat of having them taken away because they didn't follow the rules. I think it would work out well for most people around town. So that is all I have to say. I'm in favor of chickens. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the audience?
One question for Mr. Hinsman. Would there be a limit to the number of permits issued?
Madam Mayor, City Council members, the question for Ms. Schneering was, would there be a limit on the number of permits that would be issued by the city? No, there would not be a limit on the number of permits issued.
Okay, thank you, John. Anyone else from the audience? Okay.
Hi, my name is Marty Weber. I wasn't planning on getting up and talking about chickens today, but here I am. Forgive my appearance, I work with kids all day. So I live at 1355 Eagle Bluff Circle here in town. My father lived on a farm. My grandpa had a farm in Meesville area for forever, so my family is well established here in Hastings. I just want to echo a few things in support of chickens, but also want to say that I don't necessarily care that much for chickens. I'm not going to buy chickens myself, but in speaking to whether people want chickens or don't want chickens, I don't think it's necessarily about if most of the people in town want chickens. It's about
allowing people to have the chickens, echoing our founding fathers. A big thing, I'm pretty sure they talked about freedom, and having the freedom to have chickens, I think, is very important. And I think it's also in line with having like a vegetable garden on your property. It's mostly just about freedom, I guess. And I had another point, but I'm forgetting it, so I'll be done with that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? So Councilmember Leisfeld has a question for clarification from one of the gals.
So thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to make a clarification. Excellent hearing everyone's points of view and opinions. I do want to mention that in what we're talking about here is hens, no roosters, which means no baby chickens. So there won't be hatching of eggs, and there won't be chickens being born. So I just want to clarify that for those listening on Zoom or on TV that might be concerned about. Please, thank you, Lainey.
Johnson,
Yeah.
802 10th Street West. You're right, that there won't be roosters that won't fertilize eggs in individual people's coops. However, often when people purchase chickens or get chickens from a friend or neighbor, they will get the eggs that have already been fertilized by someone outside of town who has a rooster. And then they will put them in an incubator and keep it in their kitchen, and then you can watch the eggs, the chickens' eggs hatch from the eggs. But there will not be roosters according to this ordinance.
Lainey, thank you so much for clarifying that. I didn't want to confuse anyone, so thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No additional comments from the audience? Then at this time, we will go to Zoom and hear them.
First person will have Amanda Strasberg.
Amanda Strasberg, if you want to come on in, we'll listen to your comments.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Amanda. Welcome.
Okay. I'd just like to thank the mayor and the council for the opportunity to share tonight. And I just want to support chickens in Hastings. I am a Hastings resident. I live at 3395 Malcolm Avenue. And I just kind of want to touch base on some of the comments that have been made. I think that the ordinance is well written. And it will allow for responsible chicken ownership in Hastings. It won't cause, I guess, neighborhood discord or non-harmony any more than current dogs or cats in the neighborhoods would cause amongst neighbors. I have a dog, my neighbor does not. We don't have any discord over that. I don't think that would change with hens in any way, shape, or form. There's an upward trend in communities throughout Minnesota, throughout the country, to allow more, grassroots movements, green movements towards growing your own food, raising your own chickens, and really pushing Hastings into that future rather than staying behind or looking towards the past. I don't see that as the outlook for Hastings, I guess, in my opinion. Allowing individual property owners who want to be responsible chicken owners, the property rights to do so, has very little to no negative impact on their neighbors or the community as a whole. So many other cities in Minnesota have shown that, with zero complaints or minimal complaints regarding chickens that are allowed in their neighborhoods. Compared to dog complaints or nuisance complaints otherwise, chickens really are a non-issue. And again, those who want to raise chickens on their property, should be able to do so in a responsible manner. And the city has done very great due diligence, especially the Planning Commission, in writing the ordinance to ensure, that those concerns are mitigated. That's pretty much all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. Ben Hellcooper.
Right.
All right,
Hello,
welcome.
council, mayor, staff. Can you guys hear me, see me?
Yes, we can.
Outstanding. Well, welcome to 375 Tiffany Drive. I'm here to speak in favor of this ordinance, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, my parents have chickens, so I can tell you from experience that, first of all, the eggs are delicious. If you've never tried farm eggs over the industrial stuff we get from the grocery store, it is an incredible difference in taste. In fact, we had a family event a couple days ago, and one of the cousins, little kid, had just had a farm egg, and he was so concerned about it because the yolk was so yellow and it tasted so good. What was wrong with it? So if you haven't had a farm fresh egg, give me a call. Come on over. I'll make you some scrambled eggs. Also, from my parents' farm, I can tell you that they don't smell. I don't smell them until I get actually into the coop, and even there, it's a well-maintained coop won't smell that bad at all. And the sound, again, we don't hear them until we're literally right up on the chickens. I have no doubt that when we're talking about hens, they're going to be pretty quiet. But the main reason that I'm supporting this ordinance, I'd actually like to introduce you real quick to my arch nemesis. I don't know if you can see that. Oh, he just flew off. Sorry.
Ooh.
You all see that? Yeah. So that is a Japanese beetle. For the last 5 years, they've been swarming our backyard. And by the end of the fall, pretty much all of these grape leaves will look like that half of this leaf right there. Just completely skeletonized, dead. It's kind of a miracle they actually survived through the winter with so much damage. The same goes for our Honeycrisp apple trees here. They will actually strip it from the top down. By the end of fall, it'll be pretty much brown. So unfortunately, for the last couple of years, well, let me back up just a little bit. Originally, we were trying to go the organic route using neem oil and everything else that the University of Minnesota Extension recommended for them, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough. So we've had to go to the commercial bug spray, of which, as I told the Planning Commission, if you've ever read the back of one of these bottles, you would be severely concerned that this stuff is in your water supply or in your watershed. So we try to use it sparingly, but without it, like I said, the plants would just be absolutely stripped. So I support it for the eggs, for the experience, for the kids. My kids enjoy it, but especially for the pest control, the natural pest control. I've got a backyard full of Japanese beetles for protein that these chickens could enjoy. In addition to that, as of this year, we now have Colorado potato beetles appearing too. Again, another great source of protein, but unfortunately, even those bugs are resistant to this commercial spray. So I'm hoping that you guys will pass this ordinance today. I think it's very well written, compliment staff on it. But I would say after this ordinance passes, I would encourage the council to take another look at it and see what we can do to streamline it a bit. I think the $75 fee and the inspection is unnecessary. We don't do that for dogs or like that. So I hope that you pass it today and give it another look in a little bit. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Okay, Heather, if you want to come in, we're here to listen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, we can, Heather. Welcome.
Hi. Yes, my name is Heather Mines. I live on Ramsey Street. I have been here my entire life. I also own a farm out in Meesville. My family has been here for almost 150 years total, and I am for chickens. And for that reason, I will have chickens personally on my farm for composting reasons. They are low maintenance. They will keep your weeds, bugs, everything down in your lawn. They eat your grass clippings. They eat anything pretty much. They can eat everything that we can eat. So if you have scraps in your house and you don't want to drive to the compost bin, you can just throw them outside and your chicken will clean them up. So I am definitely all for chickens. I have currently a couple of ducks at the farm, and my son loves them. They are very beneficial. They do not smell. They are super low maintenance. So there's very little to no cleanup, especially if you have a free range. So if you have a fenced in yard, that will be great. And like the last person said, very minimal smell. You don't smell them until you get right up to them. And so they smell a lot less than a dog does. So I think that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Next, we will listen to Troy Weathers. Welcome, Troy, if you... Can we just wait until after we're Zooming and then we'll bring you back again? Oh, you're good.
Did we make it?
Yes, welcome, Troy.
Welcome. Madam Mayor, thank you very much, and City Council members. I appreciate the journey that we've been on for the last couple of years to come to this point today. There are so many great things I'd like to share about chickens, but those of you that know me well know that I can talk forever, so I'm going to make it short and to the point. I think this is such a cool opportunity to engage with our neighbors, to share stories, to share recipes with fresh eggs and chicken keeping ideas and so on and so on. The engagement that I have already seen in this short journey that we've been on is amazing. The new friends that I've made. Behind me, my home here at 1820 Tierney Drive, you can see these are my tomato plants, which are fertilized with chicken manure that I received from a family member that lives in Cannon Falls. Awesome stuff. There's so many cool things to talk about with this, but I think one of the things I want to point out is that we can't be afraid of change. And I did hear a gentleman talk earlier about how he felt like this was being rammed down someone's throat, or maybe I'm using my own words there, but felt like it was being jammed. And, you know, this has been a very educational process. It's been going on for quite some time. And I really applaud the path that the city council has taken and having the planning commission complete the due diligence process and make sure that everything is done the right way. Excellent work. And I'll bring to the attention of, you know, change is imminent. Things are going to happen. We need to make sure that we're being progressive. And about 12 years ago, I brought the idea of archery in the schools to the C's school. And boy, we had a lot of backlash to start with. And all of a sudden, it's one of their most popular physical ed programs that they have. 10 years ago, I co-founded the Hastings High School trap shooting team. Darn good team, by the way, largest team in the district, in the state, actually. And now it is the #1 high school sport today. It's the fastest growing high school sport today. Who would ever imagine we'd have guns in schools? You know what? That's the way you educate people. You tell people about the goods and the bads, and you educate people the right way so that everyone understands things. So I am very much in favor of the chickens being allowed in Hastings. I look forward to it. I don't know that I'll ever have chickens, but I might venture out that path. And I thank you for your time and look forward to your affirmative vote.
Thank you, Troy. Next, we will have Ashley O'Brien.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, Ashley, welcome.
Hi, I'm Ashley O'Brien. I live at 720 10th Street West in Hastings. I've lived there for 12 years now. And just wanted to say that I am for chickens, and everyone has made some really wonderful points, so I won't repeat it. But my little extra 2 cents is that I have 2 large vegetable gardens. My children and I love going out there and picking veggies all summer long, and we would love some compost that we can get just from our chickens and be able to compost their eggshells and keep their coop nice and clean, and it just kind of be a little circle of life, and it would be pretty great. So that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Okay. No other comments coming in from Zoom. There were a couple other people that would like to make comments from the audience. Sure. John, could you switch to toggle back, please?
Go through some technical stuff. Oh, you're fine. I'll just get this thing out of here. But do I need to?
No,
No, I don't want to. I just want to close this, right?
no, you toggle on the little panel to the left.
Oh.
There you go. Thank you, John.
My name is Leona Shute. We've been in Hastings since 1961. I have a question for the young lady who mentioned about I know you can't have roosters, but you can have 4 chickens, right? Okay, so the young lady mentioned about bringing in fertilized eggs. Now these eggs are gonna hatch. Now you've got more than 4 chickens. What are you gonna do with the baby chicks? That's my question.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Shute.
What happens if you only have 2 chickens and you only bring in 2 fertilized eggs, then you'll have your 4 chickens?
I'm talking about people who have the 4 chickens to begin with. What's gonna happen if they bring in these fertilized eggs? So now you have, what are you gonna do with the extra chickens now? Has anybody thought about that?
This is for them to address the council,
Are you
not
gonna
for them to debate
raise
on
the chickens
Okay.
then? So now you're gonna have 10 chickens? Are you gonna feed the children the chickens that they helped raise? I can't imagine doing that to your children. Oh, yeah, that's. Eating a chicken that you raised.
So excuse me.
So that's my question. What's your plan?
Thank you, Leona. We'll bring that question to the council and have it answered, opposed to you having to answer. Right? Okay, Councilmember Lightfoot?
Thank you. The answer to that question is the ordinance is for chickens. If you own 2 chickens and you bring 2 eggs home and both the eggs hatch, you now have 4 chickens. If 1 egg has 2 chickens and now you have 3 chickens, you have to get rid of a chicken. You get 4 chickens, period. Right, so what we got out of this is not everyone's going to get a full-grown chicken and bring it home. Some people are going to choose to get them as fertilized eggs and actually go through the experience of hatching them. And correct me if I'm right, it takes a while for a chicken to lay. It can't lay that first year. So for those who hatch their chickens, they're not immediately going to be able to lay eggs.
It takes several months.
Yeah. So there is a time period before they can hatch. But the ordinance is 4 chickens. You get 4 chickens. You buy 4 eggs. If you end up with more than 4 chickens in that process, then you have to get rid of a chicken. Take it to a farm, take it to a neighbor who has 3 chickens, right? Okay. Just clarifying. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilmember Lightfoot. Any other comments from the audience? One more time, any other comments from the audience? And I will be closing the public hearing.
One other thing too.
Could you please approach the microphone?
Ryan Winkler again. One other thing, like the gentleman had mentioned before. All right, just a moment. One other thing, like the gentleman had mentioned before about a vote or putting it up. This ordinance has been in the front headlines of the state Hastings Star Gazette, right on the front page. It's had tons and tons of exposure. And as we can tell from what's all happened here, I just wanted to say that this stuff has really been exposed. Like it's been on the front headlines of the paper.
Okay.
So that's all.
Just to correct you, it is the Hastings Journal?
The Hastings, I believe that's
Okay.
maybe what it is
Yeah.
now, so,
Yep,
okay.
just to-
Yeah, so.
Clarification.
Because every time I go to Coburn's, I see it sitting there, it's right there, so.
Okay.
You're right.
Thank you, yes. At this time, I will close the public hearing. John, do you want to make any other additional comments before council discussion?
Sure, Madam Mayor, I'm available for any questions council may have.
Okay. Councilmember Vaughn.
Let's have two clarifying questions before we get into discussion. John, you had started your presentation saying that the owner must be the property owner to have the chicken, to get the permit? Do they have to own the property if they're gonna have the chickens on there?
Councilmember, thanks for the clarification there. I don't believe the property owner has to own it. It is a situation in which the resident, the person residing on the property, has to reside on the property, the permittee. So if that permittee is leasing the property, I don't think that makes a difference. And I may look to our legal counsel for clarification on that one.
Your Honor, members of the council, the owner of the chickens must reside at the property. Just want to make sure that there's somebody with a vested interest in the chickens that actually lives there to take care of them.
Your Honor,
Councilmember Vaughn.
could you clarify, to rent a home, does that have to be on record with the city? Or if I own the property, could I rent it to anyone? And then when they apply for that, are they just, because we don't know what the rental is. Are they for a month? It could be a year, it could be, we don't know that. So I just want to verify, for renters at a home, are they on record with the city that they're renting from that home?
Your Honor, Councilmember Vaughn, members of the council, we don't require that a renter disclose that. So that is part of whatever their contractual arrangement is with the property owner. If that property owner does not care that they have chickens, that is their own arrangement. It's what they do with it once they get the chickens is where we care. So we'll make sure that they comply with our ordinance to the letter of everything contained in the ordinance.
And Your Honor, one last question for John and staff. I heard a lot tonight about education. Can you clarify, and when we approved this last time to happen at the Leduc, what zoning is it allowed to have chickens? And it's in P1, if I remember right, correct?
Sure. Yeah, Councilmember Vaughn, when we passed the chicken ordinance originally in 2009, it allowed it within the public institution, the PI district, which is essentially the Leduc Mansion, a couple of school sites, a couple of church sites, and the YMCA. I think that is about the extent of that district.
And to confirm, that was there for educational reasons. That's why we chose the P1. So if we wanted education, the schools could provide that education.
Correct. I think most of the schools, Councilmember, are within that PI zoning district, so they could opt to have chickens under the current code, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other questions or discussion, council?
I have a question.
Councilmember Brox.
So in the scenario, this is a little nitpicky. I don't know the answer. I just Googled it and it wasn't clear from that. So if you have an egg hatches, you know immediately what the gender of the sex of the chicken is at that point. So if you have a rooster, do you have to take it somewhere else? Are there places that take roosters? That's my question. That's one of my questions. And then my other question is about neighborhood. We originally, when we talked about this ordinance, had discussed neighbor notification, and I see that that's not a part of the ordinance. Can you speak to that a little bit? Why no neighbor notification portion? And, you know, is it, I'm assuming that there's a problem in carrying out that process, because if you do have one neighbor that disagrees or doesn't want you to have chickens, that essentially puts a stop on the process. So can you talk about why no neighbor notification in the ordinance and why that might be problematic?
Sure, council member, yes, we did discuss it, excuse me, at one time, having a notification requirement for those that sought a chicken license. In discussing this and looking at other ordinances, most other ordinances did not have that requirement. When we take a look at things in which we consider to have more of a detrimental effect upon neighbors, including dogs, there's no notification requirement in that aspect of it. So we decided as a staff not to bring that forward as a recommendation. Certainly the city council may opt to go differently on that one, but we took a look at the notification element of it and took a look at the impact that we've seen from chickens in our consultation with other cities that have allowed them, similar cities of size and composition, in which the code complaints that they've received annually are in the single digits. And we did not feel that that warranted doing a public notification on this license itself.
Just as a follow-up to your question about code compliance, do you have any sense for how many hours either annually is spent on licensing and code enforcement for chickens in any other comparable city or anywhere that we could reference, just so we understand what the financial impacts may be to our staff?
Sure, council member. In our conversations that we've had with other cities, a handful of complaints a year, a complaint itself, you know, it may take a half hour to resolve. When you take a look at the complaints annually that are received by our code enforcement individual, there's you know, probably 100 or more complaints that they have in a year dealing with a wide variety of issues, tall grass, junk vehicles, that sort of thing. So it would, as far as the composition and the workload related to chickens, I do not believe that that's going to be significant based upon my review from other cities.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Your Honor, members of the council, I have, as you know, represent several cities, and most of the cities that I represent have chicken ordinances in place. So I've done my share of research on chickens and sexes of chickens and when you figure that out. And it's about 3 or 4 months, you will distinctly notice all of a sudden there's noise in the morning and you have a rooster. That's the only way you can tell. I mean, there are certainly chicken sexers that know, but it's a very narrow field of people that know how to do that. So you just wait 3 or 4 months and you figure it out, and then obviously they would have to find someone to take that rooster if they do have one. And there are farms that take them. There are other people outside of city limits that can take them. So it's not usually that big of an issue to find someone to take a rooster.
Thank you, Corey, for that clarification. Additional discussion, council? Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I have a few points, but first one, the 5-year term for the applicant, is there a reason why so long? And, you know, like, I guess I'm looking at, you know, this is an opportunity to prove it, you know, so I don't know what the time frame is necessarily. Let's say it's 1 or 2 years or something like that, before a renewal opportunity, where then a reinspection occurs, make sure that you know, it just doesn't kick into autopilot, and you know, that particular homeowner is indeed doing its best to be a good neighbor and a good citizen. I guess I don't have a strong opinion one way or the another. I won't have chickens, but I probably wouldn't have a problem with somebody having chickens nearby me. But I can see where there may be, good opportunity to catch things early on to fix that problem. Not necessarily as a penalty, but as an opportunity to make sure it's going in the right direction rather than the wrong. So, is there any examples that, we have a long list of cities, but is there any examples of cities that do something like that? And then I guess I'd be curious what the rest of the council thinks about, looking at some sort of short-term initial period with not a full reapplication or whatever, but when you renew, you have to have it re-inspected.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lund.
Yeah, Councilmember Lund and Mayor, when we looked at the requirements for other cities, it varied as far as the time frame for issuing of licenses. Some had shorter time periods, some had longer time periods on that. Some didn't have any time periods at all. You issued a license and it was there indefinitely unless something changed. What I'm looking at here is really the requirements of the license itself and looking at the individual in their ability to meet the requirements that we've put forward from the sanitary standpoint, from the noise standpoint, from a hazard standpoint. And if there's going to be issues that come up, I would expect that we will hear about them and that we can address those as they come up here. So I'm comfortable with the 5-year term. Certainly the council may look at something different on that, but it provides us the opportunity to get in there and inspect initially. And talking with peers in other cities on chickens, it hasn't been an issue upon reinspection as far as those facilities being in violation after a period of time. So I think most of the instances in which we would have violations are going to be driven by a neighbor that takes issue with what's going on. And we will investigate that and make sure that complies.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, and John, thanks, because that's a good segue. I go back and forth on this. We've talked about it for a long time. Reading through this proposed ordinance, I still think it's a little too vague in my opinion, because it talks of, reading the language here, talks of negatively impact the character, health, safety, and general welfare of the surrounding area. That tells me not all the residents of this city get a say. They don't get a say until they see it. And that's what's been my hang up as the chair of the Planning Committee of Council. That has not been, I voted no because of that. We've heard some tonight, we've seen some emails, we've got some phone calls, I have, that said, why would you not let the neighbor at least have a say? At least know before they're surprised. And I keep working down the way that it's pretty generic on the wording either of the noise, odor, and filth. What's the definition of that? My neighbor versus me versus my neighbor may have a different value of that smell, that filth, or whatever. We are setting our staff, and I'm going to point out, we have one officer. Well, that's it. That's all we have in this community. So we can compare to other communities, but we have one person that takes care of all of our ordinances. And we all have been breathing on saying, hey, we need better park, we got to get rid of the weeds, we have a lot of complaints, we want to get this under control, and we're going to put something on their plate that is to go do some more inspections. Because I'm reading this, we are going to go back out and we're going to inspect to make sure it's done correctly. And it's probably going to come from a neighbor saying, what's that? Or, per the application, they have to do that. I've taken a phone call and I heard it tonight. Why isn't it going to a vote? Ask the people of Hastings. We have heard, and I heard tonight with the 200 and some people that have signed a petition. I see a room full of people, and I've had some Zoom calls, but there's 20-some thousand people in this community, 8,000 homes, and we're going to make a decision that doesn't represent all of the residents of, do you get a say or not? And that's my biggest hang-up on this, and I don't understand why we would now not at least let the neighbors know somehow, some way. That's what I hang up on, and I still think we have a service to do to all residents, that they should at least know what's going to come. I've heard, yes, the neighbors don't bring a dog in. I don't have to let them know. But I also read in here that we need a 6-foot fence. It may be chicken wire. That's just gonna make, there's more to this than just bringing in a dog. A dog can come in the house. A chicken, we're saying after 4 months, you go out and you have to have all the proper stuff that goes with it. There is a neighbor could say, hey, that chicken coop's not ready for winter. They're running an extension cord out there. Mr. Shute makes a good point. We're going back out there. We have one officer that's gonna make that choice to go out there. I don't wanna hear from staff in the next year or two. It may be minimal, and I believe people that want chickens will do the right thing, but there's gonna be some that don't, or someone that doesn't like it. And we're gonna have to send some back out there, and we're gonna be in the middle of, I didn't even get a say. How come they get to have chickens? I wish I would've had a choice. That's my biggest hang up. I think it's too vaguely written because it's not specific of what is that smell? What is that filth? What is, I've heard from other people that we need a dog catcher in this town. We also need more firefighters, we need more police, we need more park maintenance workers, and we're putting more on one employee. I think that's wrong. I don't think we're doing the right thing for the community if we're not thinking this out, and if so, put it to the community. Ask them what they think. Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fox.
Just as a point of clarification, we've been talking about this since 2009. Why hasn't it been put to a vote? Like, has this come up in the past? Why? I'm just trying to be more informed about that question because that we've talked about this a lot. So can anybody answer that?
I can speak to it a little bit. I mean,
Councilmember Vaughn.
this is the third chicken discussion I've had on this council, and I've only been here since 2015. So this is the third time around for me, and it's been voted down before, and the last time was tabled, and then we chose, I believe it was a year or two ago, not to bring it on again because we had other priorities at the time. But I think that from my vantage point, I do see that the public interest has shifted. And I have voted against chickens twice. But I do see that, although I am with Councilmember Lund, I personally don't want to have chickens. I'm not interested in having chickens. I've looked into it. It's a lot of work. And I already have to take care of 2 dogs, 2 kids, and a husband. And that's enough for me. But there are people that do want to take care of chickens, and I respect that choice. And I do see this as a property use issue. And I think it is a way that some people will choose to use their property. And in general, I want to support that. I do have some of the same concerns as Councilmember Vaughn about enforcement, about the enforcement of one officer. I am concerned about not necessarily the responsible chicken owners, which I believe the majority of them will be, but the ones that aren't. And that's true in law enforcement and firefighting. There can be problem properties that take up a lot of time and a lot of recurrence of energy and time going back to the same people. That takes up a lot of our public safety's time. So I am concerned about that. I'm not sure how quite to write an ordinance that would avoid that. Because there are people that are going to follow the ordinances and there are people that are not going to follow the ordinances, and then we have to enforce that. So I think that historically, from my point of view, and this is only my point of view, historically, I haven't felt the level of support for a chicken ordinance that I've seen this time and the amount of interest. In the past, it seems to me that it's a very galvanizing issue. For some reason, this is something people like to talk about and feel very passionate about. And the community engagement has been very good and very high, so I appreciate that. But I've seen more information, more positive information about it this time, and I think that the tide is turning with the level of interest, the environmental concerns, the people who want to do it to show their kids. I think that we need to think too about who is talking to us about this ordinance. I see a variety of ages of people talking to us about it, but it does seem that younger families are more interested in some of these things like gardening in their front yard and building. I have a neighbor who builds big planter boxes and has a huge garden in the front of his yard and does that gardening with his kids. And so I see more opportunities for us to provide those opportunities that we currently, I don't know historically if people have done that in the last 50 years. Maybe so. And we do have a wonderful rural community around us. And sort of my logic in the past has been, well, they can have these experiences if they just travel 5 or 10 minutes out of town. There's farms all around us. There's farm opportunities to visit farms, and kids go to farm for school. But that isn't quite the same as living with a dog or a chicken or another animal and seeing their life cycle and experiencing that day to day. So I respect that opinion. I think the interest in doing this has changed. And so I am willing to change my mind because I think that I want to think about the future and about what opportunities we want for people that are here, but also people that are coming here from other cities or choosing Hastings. I heard a couple of people say they chose Hastings to live here. They didn't live here already, but they chose to live here, and they're trying to make an impact, to make a change that will impact future generations. So I respect that. I do have concerns about enforcement and cost, but I think at this point, I'm just willing to say that it might be time to allow chickens in Hastings.
Thank you for clarifying my question. I just wanted to figure out why, if we should really put it to a vote, why we haven't. But I also want to recognize sorry, I'll lean in, the hard staff time that John has put into this over the last many years. So thank you, John, for putting an ordinance together that we can still tweak and make corrections to if it is not working for our neighbors. I just want to recognize that staff time.
I'll pass that on to Justin Fortin.
And Justin, yes, thank you.
He's the person that's really been carrying this through, and with Corey's help.
Yeah.
Mayor, may I ask a question about that? So if we did want to put a referendum, a citywide referendum on the ballot, which I have never seen, as long as I voted in Hastings, what is required to do that? That's my question.
Your Honor, members of the council has to find the exact wording of the referendum that they want and approve that at a council meeting. And I believe we're already late in July. We may have missed the deadline for the upcoming election, if there was one this year. If you don't have any kind of a school district or any other election, then you would have to wait till the next regular election anyway. But it is a council decision, so the council would have to vote on putting a question on the ballot, and then they would have to adopt the language very, very specifically to be the question on the ballot.
Thank you. Councilmember Lund.
We're being very polite. Thank you.
Yes. You raised your hand first.
Yes, I did. Okay, so, no doubt there's a passionate, no offense to anybody, there's a passionate few on each side, and there's a whole bunch of people that don't even know that we're having a meeting right now. So, that's the truth of the matter. And so what's running through my head, just to, shed a little light on what the thinking is, at least in one person on the council here, is, what is it going to be like when somebody's, looks out their backyard and all of a sudden there's a chicken coop popping up and they didn't have any clue, right? And I think that's really what, part of this conversation is, how do we make what's in front of us maybe reflect more the sentiment of the community rather than a yes or a no kind of situation? Because, ultimately, what we're going to all do is say yes or no to this, or maybe a form of this. But what we haven't talked about enough, I think, here is what are we going to say yes or no to? And a lot of the concerns that the one side has versus the other side, I think might be minimized if the language in here were more fitting to address those concerns. And some of that might be neighborhood involved, whatever the perimeter, pardon?
Notice.
A notice, right, of whatever X feet or something of that nature. Because I heard somebody, you had mentioned concerns about neighborhood animosity or, you know, unnecessarily bringing up some sort of divisive subject within the neighborhood. Well, you'll find that out early on rather than when I've already spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on equipment and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, there may be some benefit to that. You know, so I guess I feel like this particular language just, I don't know if the word vague, you know, you'd mentioned vague, Councilmember Vaughn, but maybe it just doesn't quite address some of those concerns properly so that people can feel good about this, because I think overall, most people are probably going to be good about this, right? We can probably agree that most people that are going to be willing to comply with these things will do a good job. And you can't always, you know, live in fear of the one or two that are going to do a bad job. We'll take care of that through, you know, enforcement and whatnot. But there may be kind of that gray area that isn't necessarily blatantly bad. And so that's what I think we need to kind of worry about, is how do we navigate through that gray area so that everybody, for the most part, comes out feeling good about it. And so, I hate to continue to stretch this thing along, but I feel like there's just not quite enough there, whether it's neighborhood feedback. I don't know if it has to go to a referendum thing. That actually seems maybe too far, but yeah, I don't know. I'd just like a little bit more conversation from council on the specifics that's in here, because it feels like we're talking about yes or no a little bit, and the specifics of it, you know, maybe we can make it better.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Leifeld.
Thank you, Honor. So a couple of things. First, to Councilmember Fox's question about why this hasn't gone before vote. I've been here, since 2017, and there hasn't been anything on, okay, that the community's had to vote on that says, hey, we should or shouldn't do this. And that's going back to the sex offender conversations that we had when we made that ordinance regarding proximity to parks and schools and such. And a good friend of mine who sits up here on the DS with me has often made comments, because she's really smart when it comes to law, about not wanting to make ordinances that are, and I don't want to change your words because you're so much better at this part than I am, but you made comments before about the ordinance, making sure that we're not removing somebody else's rights, right? So when we talked about the sex offender ordinance, it was like, okay, what is this doing for people? Okay, well, it's gonna help some people sleep at night, right? Is what it was gonna do, but were we taking away someone's rights? And that was a really big thing, and it's really stuck with me clearly, because I'm still thinking about it. And so as we sit here and talk about this, one, to me, an electorate vote would be something that's going to cost the community money, right? Your taxes are gonna go up because of it, and probably significantly. So to me, I don't feel like this particular topic would qualify in any way, because we're not taking away your rights. You know, if you don't want to have chickens, I sit with my council members, I don't want to have chickens. I think it's super cool if my neighbors do, though. But I don't want to have chickens. I've got a grandson who's going to be super into that idea. It doesn't mean I'm getting chickens. But and make sure my wife hears that, we are not getting chickens. But we end up with chickens. Anyone better? So to that piece, I don't feel that we're taking away anybody's rights. We're saying, hey, you know what, guys? And this is a grassroots thing. This is really getting a lot of momentum around the country, everywhere. And I'm highly in support of it. You know, I've got friends who forage. You know, I mean, and I've got people who's sitting here right now who are going, what does that mean? You know, these are people who go out into the woods and pick berries and pick roots, and they eat them and they make stuff out of them. And it's 2021, and that is absolutely awesome. Do I want to do it? Nope. But I think it's awesome that you guys do, and some of you are here. So I just think about some things like the time. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole here in regards to, well, I don't think that smells bad, but Trevor, you think it smells bad. You know, I think that's an issue that we leave up to code enforcement. Because I get calls regularly from people who are upset that their neighbor's grass is too long. Can anyone on this DS define for me what's too long?
More than 12 inches.
Right. And guess when your neighbors get upset? Quite a bit before 12 inches. So I think that's what we have our code enforcer for. And then I think we come back to this as we see if this becomes an issue. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill, because as we've established, there are going to be very significant, very proud owners who take excellent care of their 4 chickens. And I think then we take a look at it. We've done that before. We've looked at things and said, okay, this is how we're gonna do it. John and staff, come back to us, right? Come back to us in 6 months and let us know what's happening. Do we need to put because we've established there's an awful lot of ordinances in this town that we need to fix, because if that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have a campground opening up on Highway 61. We've got to take things as we get them, right? And this to me seems like you guys vote yes, get this moved forward. And if a neighbor ends up having chickens and you want to complain, Mayor, because your neighbor has chickens, then we deal with it. We see where it goes. I feel like we're asking too many what ifs. We don't know the what ifs. So I'm all in favor of chickens, again, not in my house or my backyard. And I feel that, I love to hear the rest of council's opinion, but I do have to say that we are fully informed. Thank you, Your Honor, for the time.
Councilmember Liefeld, Councilmember Fox.
I want to echo what Councilmember Liefeld just said in a different way. So I think that this ordinance, and I've said this to many residents, and I've had lots of conversations about wanting chickens and not wanting chickens and what that looks like. And I love that there's so much engagement about this from both sides, because that's what's important. I think adding this ordinance gives people the right to choose to have chickens versus keeping their right away from having chickens. So I think that's important right now. And I agree, we have not been talking about this. You all have been talking about this for a long time. So now that I'm talking about it, I'd like to see this move forward. And I want to stay in touch with the neighbors who are worried about it, so that if it's not working, we can fix it. So I agree. I am absolutely a yes vote.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. As we've been having these conversations, I just have to appreciate all of you, because I think that this has been a very robust and thoughtful conversation that we've all had. And I'm really happy that we are such a healthy council, honestly, that we are having such a productive conversation about this. Because in the past, we haven't had, I don't think, such a great conversation about this particular issue. And so thank you all for that. One thing I wanted to ask John Hinsman about is how similar is this to licensing dogs, and if you were to have a dog having a kennel be constructed in someone's backyard. And I bring this up because I have 2 different neighbors with little dogs, and I'm outside, and next thing I know, I have these little dogs at my ankles barking at me. And it's like, I'm glad to see them and want to pet them, but it's like, okay, I can't control their dogs. And I know when I used to have another neighbor, I knew every time they were gone, because I could hear their hound dog, just going to town barking because he had anxiety issues. And again, I couldn't do anything to control that dog. And I can't control when my neighbor put a shed, up on the property line, and I couldn't control when they decided to put up a nice tall fence, which actually is beautiful in the end, but I didn't have any say on it. And so where I'm going with this is just that there are lots of things that our neighbors do that we don't have any authority over for them, or any say in what it is that they're doing. And if they're, a thoughtful neighbor, they give you a heads up, that they're going to be doing it, but that's kind of the best you can hope for, and that you have a healthy relationship with them. And so coming back to my question to John is, if someone has a dog, do they have to get a license for that? And if they wanted to put up a kennel, what are the
parameters around that, and how many dog complaints does the city have to deal with roughly in a given year? I know we haven't asked you that in the past, but it seems like it's our best similar animal issue. Thank you, John.
Thank you, council member. Some of those I'll be able to answer, some of those I won't be able to. As far as the requirements for keeping of dogs, yes, dogs do require a license. It's issued through our city clerk. There's a fee associated with that. You need to provide proof of vaccinations and other details with it. Regarding the boarding of dogs itself and keeping of a kennel outside, if it is under a certain size, under 75, 100 square feet, there would not be any permit requirement for that. I don't think the permit requirements would be triggered for that. Really even a larger one as well, so that would be a little bit different. As far as the dog complaints that we have, I don't have the number of that in front of me here, but I do know that there are a number of dog complaints that we deal with throughout the year. In conversations with other cities that have dealt with chickens related to dogs and how those complaints scale out, significantly more. I mean, you get a number of 10, 20, 30 to 1 on dog complaints versus chicken complaints.
Okay, thank you, John. I appreciate that perspective, and I think that is just something that I'm being mindful of, at least, as we're going through these conversations, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Well, I just want the residents to know that as your elected officials, we do want to do what's right for our community. And this is my first time with the chickens other than bringing it off of the table. And I hear the excitement of everyone that does want them. And I really think they're going to be respectful to their neighbors. But on the other hand, I ask the neighbors that aren't really for it, keep an eye, and if they're not doing the right thing, that's for you to get a hold of us. Our community, we can work together with this. I used to have a dog, and I know how hard it is to have a dog. I can't imagine having chickens and being in compliant with all the issues that staff has worked on for that. So I think if they're really going to have the hens, you're going to take it and be proud of what you're going to do with your backyard, how you're going to raise them. I love the fact that kids are going to be able to be educated, and I think they're cute. I don't want them, but I think they're cute. I'm from Meesville, but I never lived on a farm, but they're so cute how they just peck along, and, so they're of God's gift to bring to our community. And there's going to be eggs, and there's going to be, like Troy Weathers said, I was amazed at looking, what his plants look like because of, all the good things. So I will be in support of this ordinance, and I hope that people that are listening, I hope they understand where we're coming from. We want to allow residents to be able to have what they deserve. As Mr. Weber had said, it's a part of freedom. And we want people to know that we welcome all to this community, and we want them to feel like they have some freedom to their properties. So with that, would anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Leifeld.
Your Honor, I would like to make a motion to consider the amendment as written by staff to allow the keeping of chickens.
Okay. And Councilmember Brox is seconding. Additional discussion, Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question about, is that me? No. I have a question about start time. I don't know. First date of application, first date of actual ability to have said structure and chickens. Is that's not in here? That would be effective today or whatever? Is that kind of the deal?
Council member, if the ordinance is passed tonight, there's a publication requirement as part of that. And then, help me out, Counselor, as far as the number of days after that publication, it becomes 7. I was going to say 7, but I didn't want to guess. 7 days after the publication of the ordinance amendment itself.
All right. Well, I guess, thank you, Your Honor. you know, I represent Ward 4. There's a handful of HOAs in Ward 4. I'm good at math, so I've already got the 4 out of 7 here at least. So I'd at least like to give those neighborhoods an opportunity to meet and amend their language if they choose. So at least those neighborhoods can write into their covenants that they do or do not accept that as possible. So I guess I would ask that, you know, that I'm going to make an amendment to the motion. I would ask that, and I'm putting this date out there as giving them an opportunity of about a month. So let's just say August 31st, this would actually go into effect.
Just a clarification, council member, on that, excuse me, that potential amendment here. So August 31st would be the date in which applications could be received by the city. Is that your intention?
Whatever the 7 days is, let's push that to, I don't know what the specifics are on that, but.
Your Honor, members of the council, I think what you're asking for Councilmember Lund is that the effective date of the ordinance would be August 31st.
Sure. So that's my amendment. A motion to amend.
So that would require a second.
Yes. That motion would require a second. That motion fails. Okay, so we'll bring it back to Councilmember Liefeld's motion with a second by Councilmember Brock's. All those in favor of that motion, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, Councilmember Vaughn and Councilmember Lund. Okay, and that motion prevails. Under Public Works, limiting watering ban. For this item, we have an introduction by Public Works. Whoops. Did I miss something? I'm sorry.
We had another public hearing.
I do. Oops, sorry. Sorry, Nick. Okay, we have a second public hearing to rescind the emergency ordinance number 2020-07. For this item, we have City Administrator Dan Waticha, followed by a public hearing and a potential action by City Council. We ask the attendees that either raise their hand in person and use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and they will be invited to speak one at a time. At this time, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this public hearing? Anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this public hearing? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak to this public hearing? No raised hands. Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing and council discussion. Or Dan, would you like to present?
This really is a matter of housekeeping. This emergency ordinance that was put in place at the start of COVID really has, with the end of the declared emergency, is no longer effective. The ordinance is moot, but a matter of avoiding having any stray language on the books. Advise just a housekeeping to officially rescind it.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Council? Councilmember Vaughn.
I just make a motion to adopt the ordinance rescinding emergency ordinance number 2020-07 regarding the waiver of late fees imposed for city utilities.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Vaughn.
I'll second.
Councilmember Vaughn, Councilmember Foltz seconds. Additional discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. Now we have Public Works and the limited watering ban. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Mayor, council members. Been a while since I've stood here. All this new technology I don't think I've used before, but at any rate, tonight we submitted kind of last second here in light of some information that we received very late last week after the council packet deadline. We have a declaration that would enhance restrictions on non-essential water use, and that stems from, I don't think it's any big secret to anyone, we're in the middle of a drought right now in the state. Other parts of the country are even worse than we're off, but we're heading that direction. A good chunk of the state is in the severe drought stage. In the metro currently, or as of the 13th of July, handful of days ago, we're in moderate. With this week's forecasted heat and lack of rain, it's really expected we'll hit severe very soon here, perhaps with the next update that the DNR puts out. So DNR sent cities with municipal water supplies a letter encouraging or strongly advising to implement emergency management techniques within their water supply plans, and we have that in our operational plan for the water supply plan for the city. City Attorney Land prepared a nice declaration earlier today that really takes us through a handful of steps that would be necessary here to implement this. And it would be in effect until the drought is over. And from what I've read here, that could take 4 or 5 inches of rain in about the next month or so in order to start to climb out of it. That's not in the cards as far as we know. So things are expected to stay pretty significant here with drought conditions. At any rate, the strongest piece of this would be to implement a time of day restriction on irrigation. We currently don't have that. All we have is an odd-even ban that requires irrigating to happen. Odd days when you have an odd-numbered address, even days when you have an even-numbered address. I should say it's not required. That's the owner's option. But this would step that up to impose time of day restrictions such that irrigating between 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. would also be prohibited. We do see a lot of folks around town that water middle of the daytime when the heat is at its peak and sunshine's at its peak. It's really not effective at helping the grass out. In fact, it can harm it, do more harm than good, and of course it wastes water. So when we're seeing our pumps run 18, 20 hours a day and our amount of water pumped out of the ground 2.5 or more times what we would during the winter periods of the month where it's strictly domestic essential type uses, we get pretty concerned about sustainability of the aquifer and also the wear and tear on the equipment that we have. Of course, we don't want any of that to break down and cause us to be with lack of fire protection or lack of water supply for critical uses. So that's the first piece. We do identify also other recreational uses being prohibited, with the exception of pools or contained systems. If a water recreational feature recycles its water or a car washing facility recycles its water, that's fine. But anything that would simply utilize that water and it would end up going to waste would be prohibited. We'd retain the 1-week exemption time for new lawns or sod that's planted in order to get those off and running with some growth, but that is currently in the ordinance. The way that we intend to kind of roll this out under the ordinance, it's required to do a 24-hour notice utilizing the radio station. Of course, we'll use our social media channels, website, notify the paper, any other methods that we might have for that. And we also would plan to utilize all of our field staff. That's not only Public Works, but other departments. John has generously offered the services of his summer intern to assist with this, building department folks, fire, PD, parks, anybody who's out and about and can see these sorts of violations occurring to hand out a door hanger at those properties with a educational statement on there and indicating that we don't want to have to step this up any further and start to impose fines. So the hope is that through an educational campaign we can curb non-essential water uses during this drought time and get through that. Otherwise, if things continue to get worse and we don't see an impact there that's helping enough, we might come back with asking for additional, more stringent restrictions, perhaps even resulting in a prohibition on irrigation altogether. But we don't want to get there. Nobody wants to get there. It's all about trying to get reaction in the way that we need it here to help out with this situation. So I don't know if there's any more that City Attorney Land or Administrator Waticha want to add to that, but I'll stop talking for the moment.
Your Honor, if I may, I would like to add one thing. You were sent out a resolution today. Obviously, we were sort of doing this, and pardon the pun, very fluidly today, trying to address all of the concerns that needed to be addressed. And one of the pieces that was sort of still in play was the penalty issue, and whether this would be included in the city's fee schedule or whether it would be in some sort of a fine schedule with the criminal system. And we did get further clarification, obviously too late to get it to you today, this afternoon, but it would need to go to a payables list with the court. And so the last bullet point in the now therefore be it further resolved of the resolution that was put before you, so that it would be to adopt an appropriate fee in the city's fee schedule. Instead, that should read that violations and restrictions and requirements of this resolution are a petty misdemeanor, subject to a fine of, and then we need to fill in the blank onto what that fine is. And just for frame of reference, a typical parking fine would be $25 or $50, but unlike a parking violation, when it is a petty misdemeanor, other than parking, the court adds a court cost, a surcharge, that is $80. So when you're thinking in your head about what you want the total fine amount to be, you need to add $80 to it, knowing that's what the resident is going to pay. It's still a payable citation, petty misdemeanor, it's non-criminal, but you need to think about where do you want to land on the repeat offenders. We're not talking about a first-time offender who didn't get notice, who didn't know that this water sprinkling ban was in place. It's somebody who has been told repeatedly to their face and they just continue to violate. Those are the people that are going to be subject to a penalty. So we need to fill in that blank on what that subject to a fine amount of is. Tonight, before you vote.
Thank you, Corey. Any discussion, council?
Your Honor.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you. Nick, have we thought of just plain education? Do we need to have an ordinance today versus we're going to be back here in 2 weeks? If we're not seeing what we need to see and the DNR recommends or forces us to do it, then we bring this in? I just hate to, I get the education part. I just don't want to start putting fees on people without giving them a chance to do, we just talked about it, do good for the community. Let the community know, hey, we need to bring this down a little bit and put some faith in the community versus do we need meat and potatoes behind the fee?
Council member, at this point, I think we do. We did try the educational approach about a month ago with the June heat wave that we had, and things tamped down a slight amount, but now they've rebounded and we're seeing the same sort of patterns that we did back then. And I think at the heart of this is we would do these door hangers when noticing somebody's watering in the middle of the day or watering on the wrong day. That is our moment to have a direct interaction, so to speak, and provide that education to them. And we would have a tracking mechanism with that where the address would be recorded. And there again, as City Attorney Land pointed out, those repeat offenders are the ones that would then be where the citation or the fee would be applied because they have been told at one point already and ignored it or however they approached it.
Follow up, Your Honor. Definition of repeat is a one time. What if I turn it on, my wife turns it on, and I make a mistake? Are we bringing in a fee versus education? I just want to make sure we're clear because I don't want a phone call saying, really, you just gave me the attorney fee or the $80 on top of the 25? I just think we got to, I know we made an effort. I want to keep doing an effort, but I just don't want to keep bringing fees onto the community, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Vaughn, I'm very appreciative of your comments. I think that, that there's a lot to be said for doing education, and I appreciate staff making all the efforts that they have been doing to do education. And I've noticed it, although I never water my grass, and so it's already pretty crisp. It's almost to the point I think it's going dormant in some spots. But with that said, you know, years ago, I used to work for the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety, and something that I feel very strongly about is that for enforcement to work, people have to truly believe that there's a chance that there's going to be consequences for breaking the rules. And all studies indicate that for those folks who, you know, most folks will do the right thing, right? You know, because we're all mindful, most of us are mindful, but for those folks who are the holdouts, to get them to comply, it means that they need to feel that there's a chance that they're actually going to have consequences with an enforcement officer, and that there'll be a penalty that's provided with that. And so I really do strongly feel very positive about enforcement efforts. And so I'm supportive of this, and it's the right thing to do for our aquifer system. And so I am personally supportive of this measure. So thanks, Nick, for bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. My computer went dead.
Okay.
And so it was a motion to put in place, thank you, a resolution declaring a limitation on water sprinkling and other exterior water usage as presented by staff.
What about the fee? We'll need to add the fee.
And adding the $50 fee.
Will
And
you
adding
have,
the fee. Yes,
okay, so $50 plus the $80 surcharge.
yes,
So a total of $130,
okay,
right?
yep,
I'm asking.
yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
that is a motion on the floor. Councilmember Fox, were you going to second that? Yes. Okay, with a second by Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor of that motion, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion prevails. Okay, we under community development, we had the second reading on the adopt the ordinance of the city code amendment for chickens, and we also have a 2020 community development annual report.
Thank you, Mayor,
Thanks,
City
John.
Council members. Given the hour here, you've all seen the report itself, and I'll give a brief recap. I'm not going to go through a lot of discussion related to that, but looking at 2020 and the work that we've done in community development, and I want to thank the staff, Justin Fortney, our city planner, Eric Moss, our economic development coordinator, Rusty Fifield, who was here last year doing yeoman's work in that position as well, in helping us out. The report that you see before us was put together by our community development intern, Grady Timmerman, looking at some of the past things of last year. Highlights from this. From a residential development side, we all know that over the past 10 years or so, we've been very eager to see new development come forward. And in 2020, we saw a lot of that coming forward, which is great to see. You can see the new developments going up residentially wise with the 40-acre annexation out General Sieben Drive at Heritage Ridge, the 32 units that are part of the villas at Pleasant, and the 2 senior apartment complexes that were approved and will be starting construction shortly. That's great news. What's great about that as well is that the trend that we're seeing from the demand of people that are looking for new projects within the city remains to be strong. So we believe that that's going to continue on as we go through the years here, and hopefully we'll be able to hit different geographic areas and different markets for development of residential housing units. So from a housing standpoint, we're doing great. We have a lot of potential inventory or potential land that we could bring into inventory, showing on the maps here. So that we're doing good in that period. Looking at economic development, last year, COVID obviously came forward. That was a challenge for everybody. Was proud of our staff and being able to be very proactive in thinking out of the box and bringing things forward. The HART grant that Rusty had managed last year was tremendous, provided $180,000 to over 70 businesses within the downtown area. Now, this was something that was done prior to any other facility, state facility, federal facility, county, doing anything about local business assistance. We took money that we had budgeted for other things, put it towards that with your assistance and with Hedra's assistance. So we've heard a lot of great things because of that. The parklets that we established downtown, albeit last year were probably a little bit rough looking, they've been improved substantially this year. And different things that we did to think out of the box there. Industrial park growth, as you've seen, has been very good in the past year as well. We've had 3 sales between late fall this year, early this year, continued demand there. So I'll stand with that. I'm appreciative of the support that you've given us in the commissions, our HEDRA, our HPC, and Planning Commission, and stand for any questions.
Thank you, John. Any questions, Councilmember Lund?
No questions, just nice report, well put together. A lot of good information in there, and a lot of it, you had a lot to work with too, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Fox.
Also not a question, I just want to thank you and your staff so much. It's been an honor to work with you on HEDRA and on council, John. And the work that Eric is doing is just outstanding. We're really lucky to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. All right, John, thank you so much, and yes, thank your staff and everyone for great report, and it's so exciting to see all the things that we've done and the things that are coming ahead, so thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, under administration, we had the second reading to adopt the ordinance for the rescind the emergency order, and from consent agenda, we pulled number 5, which is a resolution for authorizing a submittal of grant for the Dakota County CDA RIG for the Seaward Apartments. And John, can you maybe answer some questions that Councilmember Vaughn may have?
Thank you, Your Honor. John, I just want to clarify this because it has in the subject line, consider resolution, the support of River City Investments LLC application for a project redevelopment initiative grant through Dakota County, through DCA. The request is for them to do it. I want to clarify, are they applying for the application or is the city applying for it?
Sure. Council member, the city would be the applicant. The CDA's grant does not allow private entities to be applicants, so we would be the applicant of it, the application. As far as the work that went into the application, or is going into the application, we've put that directly on Mr. Seward. He's preparing the application itself. We will review that and submit it on his behalf and on the council's behalf if you choose to support.
And I just want to clarify, this developer seeking financial assistance from Dakota County. I want the council to remember, this same developer is the one that got the land for $1, but didn't provide the data that we asked for to justify the subsidy of the land of the parking lot. That's where I'm hung up a little bit, because the memo is somewhat confusing of the developer is going to ask for more assistance and the city's supporting on that, but we already supported this developer by selling this land for $1 after we didn't get what we wanted for to justify the subsidy. I think it's misleading, and I think the community needs to know this developer got the land for $1 from us, and now is asking us again to sign off on, go apply for another thing, grant, so they can use it to help move their project along and to dismantle whatever you said today, John, the house and everything else with it. I thought the hang-up was us giving the land away for $1. Now, is this development not going forward if this doesn't get accepted? A lot of unknowns, and I have a tough time of us signing off on this for a developer. If it's such a good deal, then it should be rent control. CDA to me was, if you're going to get a grant from them, then we should be controlling the rent for those people that are going to live there someday. This developer is asking for more public dollars, but will not have rent control, is how I understood it. and I think that's wrong for public dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion, council? Councilmember Fulch?
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess, John, I have a question. So moving forward, the grant application, the city's not on the hook for an in-kind match, any further financial assistance or anything to that effect, right? It's just that we're just saying, given the head nod, that yes, this is being supported by the city. We made this gracious donation of the land for $1 and that we're being supportive. I'm just looking for, the city's not being asked within itself for any further obligation, correct?
Councilmember, as far as this application goes for the grant, there is a requirement that the applicant provide a 2-to-1 match. So whatever funds that he applies for as part of this grant, he's going to have at least double that going into those specific portions in which he's asking for assistance for. The city will not be on the hook for this grant.
Okay, thank you. For me, at least, I mean, going to Councilmember Vaughn's point that we have been very supportive so far. I know that Hedra has been, discussing this in support of it. And so I, for one, I'm excited that this new development's going to be going on, in the downtown. We definitely need more housing opportunities within our community, and particularly in the downtown, to help make it more vibrant. And so I personally am supportive of the effort and the assistance. At least if we can at least give the head nod that we're supporting this endeavor and increase their chance of receiving enough revenue to be able to see that the project is successful, I think that's a good thing then. So I'll make a motion to approve
It's a resolution.
the resolution to authorize the submittal of the grant to the Dakota CDA Rig Stewart Department. I do have the agenda here. Thank you.
Okay, that's a motion on the floor, and Councilmember Fox would second that. Additional discussion, Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. John, I would ask then, if this goes forward, if that CDA grant application requires justification for the use of those dollars, just like we asked for justification of those dollars, I want to know about it. I would hope everybody wants to know that the applicant is producing it for the county grant, but didn't produce it what we asked for justification of that. That's all I ask, that this, it just is not right use of public dollars, in my opinion, if we're going to use, if there's no benefit to the public. The developer is going to get the money if we sign off on it. So that's my only hand on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Brox.
Thank you, John. Just to follow up on Councilmember Vaughn's point, are you aware if this project requires this funding in order to move forward?
Councilmember, I'm not aware that this funding is critical to the project itself. In answering that, if the grant is not awarded, would this project go away? I'm not aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Fox.
I appreciate and value your concern, Councilmember Vaughn, and public funds. That can be a sticky subject as a business owner. This is very strategic, and I appreciate that because I do want it. I want to see this succeed. I don't want there to be any hitch. And I think part of the public investment that Mr. Seward is making is in developing this area. Just as Councilmember Fulch mentioned, we are in dire need of this level of housing for people in the downtown area. So I value your comments and share your sentiments and have a different perspective as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Vaughn.
Just yielding to, I agree about the value. Well, what's the value? That we don't, no one's telling us what the value of that's going to be. So we say we need this, but we don't even know what the rent's going to be. It may be really expensive, and they'll be like, that's way more rent than I thought it was going to be. That's not good use of public dollars. That's my hang up. We don't know what rent's going to be. It's market rate. And what the market says is what it goes. So that's my concern.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch.
I'm good. Oh,
Oh, your lights. Okay, there is a motion and a second.
Mayor.
Councilmember Brox.
I do want to agree with what Councilmember Vaughn is saying, because I think it's an important point. I think we had this discussion when we talked about giving money to the YMCA, when they came to us years ago. That was a member-based organization that exists for its members, and it does do a lot of public good. But at that time, I said I wasn't going to vote for the city to give them money because I felt like it was only benefiting a specific subset of the population. I think your logic is similar here. If the city is going to get involved in housing projects, what benefit is that? Usually when a city or a state or a county gets involved, such as the CDA, it's to benefit economic assistance for a group of people who couldn't afford housing otherwise. In the housing market in general, we don't get involved in setting rental rates or what a market rate apartment should be in Hastings. That is controlled by the market. So I just want to echo what you're saying in the sense that public dollars usually go straight to a public benefit. That public benefit is housing that someone couldn't otherwise afford that is being subsidized by the city or the county, in this case, the county. So those dollars are going for a very specific reason to reach a specific population, to give them access to housing. And I think that's something that I definitely support. In this case, it's not necessarily that clear cut. And so I think that's your logic, and I support that and agree with that logic. I still am glad the project is moving forward, and I wish the developer success. But I would be concerned if there was another request that came back to us for any funding for this development. So I will just say that in advance. I would be hesitant to accept or look at any kind of other funding assistance from the city itself.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. With a motion and a second, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposition. Thank you, thank you. All right, council, do you have any announcements? Okay, I have a couple. Summer programs at Levy Park, Wednesday, July 21st is Story Time in the Park. The theme is Bears in partnership with Pleasant Hill Library. Thursday, July 22nd, Music in the Park with Leadfoot Larry, supported by the Ruth and George Doffing Charitable Foundation. Friday, July 23rd is Movie in the Park is The Croods, sponsored by Ardent Mills. Please bring a non-perishable food donation for Hastings Family Service. Wednesday, July 28th is Story Time in the Park. The theme is Animals in partnership with Pleasant Hill Library. Thursday, July 22nd is Music in the Park with Axis Mundi, supported by the Ruth and George Doffing Charitable Foundation. As we all know, this past weekend was our local Hastings Rivertown Days, hosted by the Hastings Chamber of Commerce, and we would just like to thank everyone that was involved, and it was a great event for our community, and it was wonderful to just see everybody out attending and enjoying the outdoor life after COVID. So we appreciate Christy and her staff and the whole entire Rivertown Day Committee and all the volunteers that put on a great event. Our meetings coming up are Tuesday, July 20th is the Heritage Preservation, which has been canceled. Wednesday, July 21st, 6 p.m., the City Council Workshop, our strategic planning session. Monday, July 26th, 7 p.m., Planning Commission. Tuesday, July 27th, 7 p.m., Heritage Preservation Commission. Thursday, July 29th, 6 p.m. is HEDRA Commission. Monday, August 2nd, 7 p.m. is City Council. With that, Council, I would accept a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Fulch and Councilmember Fox for a second. No discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion prevails. Thank you. And then I'll see her late.